What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Young Legends podcast. I'm your host, Caption, aka Caption Red, and we have a very special guest today, Mr. Liam Nelson. Liam Nelson is an award-winning 19-year-old filmmaker based out of Atlanta, Georgia, who is currently working on his first feature documentary about people with a rare connective tissue disorder called Marfan syndrome. Liam, it's so good to have you on the show today. How are you, man?
I'm good. How about you? Good to be here.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me and just sharing about your life and everything that's going on. Speaking of what's going on, do you have any fun stories to share about things that you've been up to? And it could be film related. It could be something crazy that happened at the grocery store, whatever you want to share.
My life's been a little crazy as of late. I work with a guy named Steve Whitmire, who was the former voice and puppeteer for a bunch of big Muppet characters, Kermit the Frog, Ernie. He basically took over from Jim Henson when he passed away and studied under him, for 12 years before Henson's passing. So, he was a real mainstay at the Muppet Show, and he left about a year ago and went totally independent. So it's been me, him, a writer friend of his agent, and his wife, just all working together on some new material, new characters. And so he does Comic-Cons as a way to make a little extra cash to fund these projects, doing autographs and that kind of stuff. So we thought might as well bring a live show out there with one of our new characters. And because we're such a small operation, I have a Ford Flex, which is, a big square car that we packed the entire live show, 3 cameras, character, props, set, lighting, all into my car, plus 3 people in our luggage, and drove all the way to Louisville, Kentucky for our first show, where we had Henry Winkler and Brian O'Halloran. So Winkler is the Fonz from Happy Days. He was on Arrested Development, Waterboy. He's on Barry, the new show on HBO, which he just won an Emmy for his role on there. And then Brian O'Halloran, who is on Clerks, he's one of Kevin Smith's big friends who's in all his movies. They were both on the docket for our show. We get to Louisville, super excited, super nervous. Any minor thing going wrong would set us all into a spiral at this point. And we go through the car and unpack, as soon as we get there. And what did we forget but the entire background of the show? So we had all the stands for it. We had all the cameras to shoot against it, but we didn't have the thing that made it in a black void. So we needed something that fit our dimensions perfectly, that didn't refract, because or else you would see Steve behind his hidden set piece. So it had to be a very specific type of fabric with very specific dimensions. And I was about to have to drive back 6 hours each way to go get this piece of cloth the day before the show. And so I would have been arriving in about 6 hours before we went live, which, oh boy, that would have been stressful. But luckily, Steve is a very crafty guy, and I was able to talk him down from having me drive back. And we went to a fabric store, and he ended up staying up all night to sew a new one instead. So the show went on. We shot our little piece, and that little piece is going to come out right before one of the first episodes of our new live show, I think next month.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the way that story ended, because I pictured the story being, hey, Fonz, sorry, dude. We know you're a big deal, but you're just going to have to sit this one out.
Right.
So,
all right. We forgot our sheet. We can't interview you anymore. But yeah, we made it happen.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Very cool, man. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I know you can't share too much about it. So when you can, I will make sure to let the world know.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Liam, I'm going to ask you the question that you get asked a lot in person, which is, how tall are you?
7 feet tall. And I could have answered that as soon as you said the question, because, and that's the thing I do a lot of the time too, is people will be like, hey, excuse me, can I ask you? And I'll just say 7 feet. And they'll be like, wow, how did you know what I was going to ask? It's like, wow, it's almost like you're not the first one to ask that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. You should lie to him and just say like, I'm 8.5 feet tall, and
Oh
then
no,
just look at him and be
I've
like,
stared someone in the eye and said I'm 5'10", and they're like, no, you're not. And it's like, I mean, I would know. And then they just kind of walked away confused.
yeah. And then get a fake ID that just says 5'10", and
Right,
then just
there you
like,
go.
well,
It's a very elaborate prank to play on people in public.
absolutely. Very cool, man. Well, I respect everything that you're doing. You're just I don't know what I was doing at 19, but I wasn't making documentaries. I think I was making pancakes.
Right.
That's about it. But
I still do that too.
yeah, absolutely. It's a skill I just mastered in the past year, so I feel really good about it.
Congrats.
Yeah. Um, so tell me a little bit about your life. You do have the condition Marfan syndrome,
Mhm.
so you've grown up with that. And so tell me a little bit about that. And I also want to hear about filmmaking. So you tackle that however, in whatever order you want to.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny. It's kind of a combined story. Like I just said, am 7 feet tall, and I've been the crazy tall kid my whole life. So from ages, as soon as I was born, basically, to when I was like 11, people were like, "Oh, you're tall. You will play basketball." Not like, "Oh, do you want to play basketball?" It's like, "You're going to play basketball." And then when I was 11, I was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. Your connective tissue is what holds your entire body together, and ours is fundamentally more elastic and fragile. So my heart system, my aorta, is connected to the rest of my heart system with connective tissue, and if I were to overexert myself on a regular basis, the more I do that, your aorta is supposed to expand and contract as you exercise, but mine would just continue to expand, and eventually, like a balloon, the bigger it gets, the thinner the walls, and the easier it would be to dissect, which is the main thing that people with Marfan syndrome really have to keep an eye out for, is aortic dissection, which is, repairable now because they have surgeries, but that's what led me to stop playing basketball, because I didn't want to put myself at risk for anything like that. And, when I was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome, I was 11 years old, and I wasn't ready for puberty, let alone this massive diagnosis to be dropped on my shoulders. And It didn't help that, when you go home and Google it, up until about 20 years ago, 30 years was like the max lifespan for someone with Marfan syndrome. Like there were some really like hard numbers out there, like on the first few results. And so I had, despite the fact that I had amazing doctors and an amazing support system of friends and family, I had convinced myself that I didn't have the future that I now know I have, because, I had convinced myself that Marfan syndrome was going to deprive me of my dreams. So I stopped aspiring to them. And this lasted for a few years. I was really struggling in middle school with like motivation, because, trying to find your passion and like realize what you want to do, it's tough when you have this like sense of mortality that you all of a sudden like are crushed by. And during this whole process, a different kind of thing was happening, where I had an excuse to not play basketball anymore, which is the thing that everyone else wanted me to do. And I could go do the thing that I used to do when I would skip basketball practice and go make movies with my friends in the backyard. So, despite the fact that I had my future in my own mind taken away from me, I had found what I love to do for now. And so I started just doing filmmaking stuff for fun. And that's when I first started, making films with my mentors, the Bontrager twins, who I have been working with since I was like 12. So I started doing things, but the difference is I was never thinking long term. It was only, right now, this is fun, so I'm going to do this. And so, despite the fact that I knew what I loved to do, and I knew that I wanted to do it with the rest of my for the rest of my life, I didn't think I had the rest of my life to do it with. Until I got to go to a conference put on by a nonprofit called the Marfan Foundation, who I now work for as an ambassador. They are a nonprofit that creates community and advocates for people like me. And so basically I go to a conference, and I've never met anyone else with my same disorder before. And I meet, 300 plus people with the same disorder, all in different places in their lives, doing amazing things. People who, are in their 70s, who had lived their lives and retired. That thing that I never thought was like achievable. And so they basically helped me open that door to my own future. And once I started doing that, I used the combination of passion for filmmaking and this renewed drive and this renewed sense of like, I have time to do the things I want to do, so I can start thinking and planning for my future and doing things that'll help move me towards my future. And I like kind of took off running. And so over the next few years, I was able to like get a short film into the Cannes Film Festival, and just by like,
Nice.
working with my film mentors and working, by myself, and just really putting my nose to the grindstone and just doing as much as I could with this time that I now had. So it really, I mean, I don't think I would be where I am right now if I didn't have Marfan syndrome, which is why I think it's really appropriate that like that's my first feature film is about people with Marfan syndrome, because these are the people who essentially like, without these people, I wouldn't be able to make this film, and in more ways than one.
Sure, that's awesome, man. That whole just the hope that you found through this whole community, and the guys who are helping you with the films.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me? I'm just a little curious about the first conference. What was that like walking in, and then all of a sudden you're not the only one?
Yeah. It happened. So I was a teenager at the time, and there's different programs for different age groups. So there's like a kids program, a teens program, and a young adult, and then an adult program. So I'm a young adult council member now, and I was a teen council member back when I was in the teen program. And the teen council is like a leadership council of like some of the more involved teenagers in the foundation, and they host a like meet and greet for all the new teens every time at the beginning of conference. So we came in like half a day early, and we went in, and we're going to get like paired up with some people who've been there before to kind of help integrate us into the big group. And I got there a little early for that, and I met two guys outside of the room, and these were the first two people with Marfan syndrome I had ever met before in my life. And it's all of a sudden like I'm in a room with two people who look kind of like me, and one of the guys is like 6'8", and I can look him in the eye, and they all have similar features, and it freaked me out, honestly. I was like, wow, whoa, this is weird that everyone's kind of like me in here. And then
Sure.
15 minutes later they open up the doors for the meet and greet, and not everyone with Marfan syndrome presents the same way, but I saw 5 or 6 people who had at least one aspect that I see in myself. So it's like you see a little bit of yourself in everyone there, because with a genetic mutation like that, it does depend on your own genetic makeup of how it's going to affect you physically, but like a lot of the times you'll have similar features because they fall along the lines of the mutation. So like all of our long bones are longer, we have bad eyesight, indented chests, turned in feet, long skinny limbs. So like walking into a room when you've spent your whole life feeling like you're the only one who looks like you do, all of a sudden proving to yourself that like, oh wow, there's like 40 people who look vaguely similar, and they're all right here right now.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I imagine y'all are just a really tight knit group. I mean, obviously you're not friends with everybody, but you had that.
I mean, yeah. As of late, when I first started going to conference, I made a really tight group of friends, and I've kept in touch with those people, throughout the years. And there is the usual like drama that happens in any community with interpersonal whatever, but for the most part, especially in the last couple of years, because I've been doing the documentary, and because I'm a camp counselor for their Camp Victory program, which basically helps take kids like me who never got to go to an outdoors like high adventure summer camp and puts them into a that summer camp environment, but with a specialist nurse practitioner there who knows about Marfan syndrome, and then a counseling staff who people like me who either have the disorder or love someone who has it, so they can always be keeping an eye out and have a really open dialogue about boundaries and what everyone like feels comfortable doing. So because I've been able to do that and to do the documentary, and I've just kind of been at conference for the last few years, and I'm a generally friendly person who enjoys like starting new conversations, and I get called on to speak at a lot of conference. I spoke actually 5 times last weekend at conference. I just got back yesterday, so it was pretty intense. But they having this opportunity means that most people at conference are now at least semi-aware of me, which is cool. So you get to go and talk to people who they all like will remember me, because I'm usually the tallest one there still, and so it's a really good like icebreaker because I'm automatically like, oh, hey, it's good to see you again. And even if I don't fully remember the conversation we had last year, they're also like warm and inviting. And it's like, oh, cool. So like you're keeping track of like everything we talk about. So I can just jump right back into this like this relationship. And so it really does make you feel like it's a big family reunion. Like that's kind of what it feels like is everyone knows you. It's hard to keep track of everybody, but everyone's so friendly and warm and you like connect so immediately that you can just jump right back into
Oh,
it.
I love that, man. Yeah, that sounds like such a fun thing. So, Liam, could you tell me a little bit about, or could you speak to some young people right now? Because as you told your story, you were a young person who was struggling, and you found a lot of hope. And if with teenagers, and particularly in your situation, where you were the only person that you knew that was going through what you were going through. But teenagers in particular, and young people in particular, have this "I'm the only one" syndrome. I know that I had it when I was young, and so if you could go back and just talk to your younger self while you were struggling, what do you think that you would say to yourself, and what do you have just for the young people out there as far as just some life advice?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I lost when I lost like that hope for my future is a sense of like agency and my ability to like do things and to grow and to make things. So never underestimate your ability to make things happen. I decided I wanted to make this documentary when I was laying in a hospital bed after my chest surgery. I just like decided with a friend of mine that was like, hey, I want to make something about people with Marfan syndrome. And 3 years later, I have our trailer screening. We had like 350 people give it a round of applause. We have people like thousands of people on Facebook who are engaging with it, and we have people from all over the world messaging us like excited about the film. So it's like something that just because I was talking to people about it and people shared it, you just need to take the initial step and just start working on it. I spent a long time just thinking like, oh, I wish I could do this, but the only real way to start doing that is to start doing it. Like even if it's something stupid, like this whole documentary, it's not at all what I thought it was going to be at first. I was like, oh, well, maybe we'll make something about kids with Marfan syndrome. So we went to a camp and we interviewed a bunch of kids. The first year of the family camp for Camp Victory, we interviewed a bunch of kids with Marfan syndrome, and then one of those kids, Ole Johnson, who he had dislocated eye lenses, which means shape and color but no detail in his vision, who's a cartoonist who reminded me a lot of myself, helped influence the story to where it's now about the people who inspired me and Ole. So you never know what you're going to find, and as long as you take that first step, you kind of get the ball rolling and you can keep that momentum moving, and you get people behind you as you go through the process, as long as you're honest and open and like you ask for help when you need it, because you are a young person, and a lot of people are gonna assume that you can't do it because you're young, and you're gonna feel like you shouldn't ask for help to prove those people wrong, but you should ask for help because sometimes you'll need some help, uh, especially when you got like 90 hours of footage to edit uh, in 6 months, which is gonna be a fun little time for me. But yeah, so it's just don't let the idea of it get in the way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic, and it's inspirational to meet someone who kind of found, and not to sit here and say this is your entire journey, because you have a whole life ahead of you, but to find your calling and the things that you're doing right now this young in life. It's awesome. How did you, I guess, start tinkering with cameras? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can get into. So,
I mean, as far as cameras go, I had a Mickey Mouse camera when I
nice.
was 4. So I would just shoot little 6-second videos all over the house with like my pets and myself, and then eventually I upgraded from that. I made a weird leap to spy glasses. So they were like glasses with a camera in them, and I just shot a bunch of like POV movies. Me and my friends made a bunch of like paper guns and just like made first person war movies with my spy glasses, and we did horror movies. We did all sorts of everything. So it was like just the fact that my dad gave me one camera along with, I had a bunch of other things as a kid. I was exposed to a lot of different kind of avenues, but the camera kind of stuck, and doing that kind of stuff with my friends stuck. And I did that for fun all throughout my childhood, which helped kind of contribute to it being a good career path for me, because it's like I'm making movies with my friends, but now I get paid to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, the Mickey Mouse thing, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure your dad wasn't thinking, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy this camera, and then one day my son's gonna make a
Yeah.
documentary when he's 19." But
Right.
that
Yeah. No, I give all the credit to that camera. I couldn't be here without it.
oh, that's fantastic. Oh, man, you just gotta tinker is what you're
Right.
sharing with everybody.
Eventually, you'll work your way up to a flip camera,
Oh, yeah.
and then then a Canon 70D, and then you'll get a film into the Cannes Film Festival with that.
There you go. Awesome, man, very cool. So, tell us about this documentary, 90 hours of footage. I I make podcasts, I've made videos before.
Hmm.
That is a lot of footage.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. It's a lot.
I think I would just look at that footage, and then I would probably spend, like, half a day, crying and lamenting, and then
Yep.
and then we would get to work. But, tell us about the documentary, the journey, anything you wanna share about it.
Well, I mean, just talking about the amount of footage for a second. Imagine you have 90 hours of footage of all the people who inspired you most about how you're going to continue living your life, and then try to cut that down to an hour and a half. Just like, oh yeah, just pick the best hour and a half of them inspiring you to have hope for your future. Just pick the best little bits.
Ugh.
So it's been insane. It's been great. It's been an emotional roller coaster for sure. Very stressful, very gratifying to see. Like, we had our trailer screening, our like full preview, which is like 10 minutes long, which is like a chunk of the movie, which is the first chunk we really put out there at conference this past weekend, and we got a really great response, and so that was really, really nice. But the documentary is basically like, it's the stories that I needed to hear when I was struggling with my diagnosis. It's the stories that Oli, the cartoonist, needed to hear when he was struggling with his. It's putting those stories into a digital format for people who can't go to a conference or a camp, and making it, partnering with the Marfan Foundation to distribute it internationally. So we hope to, do local screenings all around the world with the film to, help the people, kids like me, have hope for their future and meet these people who will inspire them to live a more passionate rest of their lives. So, and yeah, it's been a process. Like I was talking about earlier, it's evolved completely over time. And so, just like, sitting here and looking at all this footage and how much I've changed, and how much, because, like I said, I started making it when I was 16, and I'm 19 now. And I know that doesn't sound like a long time, but oh boy, did my ability change since my first interview. I did not know how to light an interview to save my life for the first like 3 batches of interviews. And then now I'm shooting with a whole new camera for my interview, and I have professional lighting, and it's a whole, you see the whole progression. And so that's kind of, I've been working on it for 3 years, which has made it extra hard to like know how to tell this story, because I had so much time to think and to get wrapped up about all the different like storytelling devices I could use. Like, we're going to walk through a hallway, and then if you open this door, someone's story is going to be behind this door. And it's like, it's just just fluff that I was trying to like pad down the movie with, and try to, make it as much not me sitting and talking as possible. But you realize eventually that like that's what it needs to be, is for me sitting down and like taking people through this journey that I went on, because like no one else can take them on the journey that I went on. And I'm someone who is getting this same inspiration that they are needing. So I think I'm the best like guide for that. But it's hard, to edit, to decide what parts of people's stories are the most important to you, or what you think, would resonate with an audience of people who, I'll get messages sometimes being like, oh, my, 14-year-old son has been so depressed, and he's like, but if he sees this movie, like, oh, this is great, I'm so excited to show it to him. And it's just like, oh, don't mess it up. Don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my God,
because
that's a lot of
this is this
yeah.
this is
Go
the
ahead, sorry.
second documentary that's ever been made about Marfan syndrome. Like there's second one ever, and one in every 5,000 people have this disorder, which is it's not a lot, but it's not a little, it's not a small amount of people. Like one in every 5,000, that's several 100,000 people, and that's a pretty big potential audience, and it's an audience that I care intensely about. I worked for the Marfan Foundation as an ambassador, so I get to see these people in multiple capacities. Like I was saying before, I do camp, so I get to see a lot of these kids who I interviewed in the first part of the documentary. I see them every year at camp. One of them, Ole Johnson, like who I was telling you about before, we used my camper again this year, and we actually shot a little something where he went and sat down at the same spot that I interviewed him 3 years ago, and he looks totally different, and I look totally different, and everything's totally different. But you just kind of have that moment where we come back and see where it all started. But yeah, so like getting to see all these people in different capacities, it's been great, but it's also made it super hard to be objective about it, which is why I love having my two editors who are I have a production company called New Haven Productions, and so we do artist video direction, we do editing, we do just videography for events, we do any weddings, we do photography, we do anything, and they're my I guess I'll call them my partners in that, and they are willing to help out on the documentary. So they've been helping out with some of the editing, which has been great, just to have, a couple people looking at it who aren't, haven't had their lives changed by these people that they're trying to cut down the interviews of,
Sure.
which has helped me kind of start trimming down to a narrative that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of what I'm hearing from you on that is just surrounding yourself with some advisors and objective advisors. I think that's really important.
People who care about you, but who aren't so invested in the story that they are also blinded by anything.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Well, Liam, I want to, I would love to talk to you for another hour. But I really want to wait because your documentary is coming out in about 6 months, roughly, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, like January, February.
Okay, great. So I want to carry this conversation on then and just hear more about just your life and the journey of making this documentary. And hopefully you'll be down to like 89 hours by then, or not just kidding. But
Right. Yeah.
but so why don't we?
It's a Lord of the Rings length trilogy.
Oh my goodness, I really can't imagine. I would oh man, I would have a hard day, a hard week, hard month. But
Yeah.
I do just kind of want to bring this conversation to a close. But I do want to hear just, is there any final thoughts that you want to share for now? And you can share more later. But just right now, is there anything that you feel like the world just needs to hear?
Yeah, I mean, find what you love and do it. I know that's very cliche to say, but I've been fortunate enough to be almost placed in a community that I have the capacity to care so much about by my life circumstances. So, take a look around you and see what might be hard right now, but see if there's a community surrounding that thing. So, if you have anxiety, find friends who have anxiety who can deal with that. Find a community who can address whatever you're going through, people with experiences, because it really did change my life, and I believe it'll change most people's.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's great. Just knowing that you're not alone in life and
Feeling understood is very important.
getting understood, absolutely. And yeah, just doing what you love. That's a beautiful way to just wrap this whole thing up. Well, Liam, it's been a pleasure talking to you. So, tell me again about your company.
Yeah, so the company's called New Haven Productions, newhavenproductions.com, in case you need if you're any sort of artist and need a reel put together, if you have footage, if you need footage shot of you, if you, are wanting to pursue anything about your own documentary. We do real estate, we do, just about anything. We have our own studio space, so we're down to work with. I make an effort to work with artists to kind of help build their portfolio, and then that you guys can come back to me later and kick it back over, because I like to help local artists succeed as much as possible. Yeah. So, and then newhavenproductions.com, that's where we have all of our portfolios. And you can find info about the documentary there. Also, our Standing Out in a Crowd Marfan documentary is the name of the film. And we have a Facebook page called that.
Hold on. Standingoutinacrowd.com? Or
Standing Out in a Crowd, a Marfan documentary is the Facebook page.
Okay. Standing Out in a Crowd, a Marfan, MARFAN documentary. I'm going to link it in the show notes. But okay, cool. And is there any social media handles that you want to share, or
my Instagram at Liam J Nelson? I post a lot of the stuff I'm up to, and sometimes that's fun. I do a lot of photography for fun, so
nice. Liam J Nelson at Instagram.com, in case you haven't heard of it. Good gosh, what am I talking about? All right. Liam, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with
thank
you.
For having me.
No, absolutely, man. I'm so excited about this documentary. By the way, you're still in the fundraising portion because it's not done, and things apparently cost money. Filmmaking's expensive. I had no idea until oh my gosh, I look at numbers and I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, not doing that again.
I make all my money doing videography. I spend all my money doing film, and you would know as well. But if you happen to have an extra dollar in your pocket, we have a fundraising page that's linked on our Facebook page or our website. You can donate there. It's tax deductible because we are a nonprofit documentary film, because we're benefiting a nonprofit. Yeah, and we'd love any sort of support you guys can give, because it sends us to film festivals, and any excess money that isn't spent on film festivals goes directly back to the Marfan Foundation. So that's, what better way could you spend a buck or two?
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about our next conversation. This is going to be great. It's going to be great. You're doing amazing things. You are an impressive young man.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just proud to be able to talk to you and see you continuing on. So thanks for joining me. And no problem. I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
All right.
Thanks so much.